No fear. No political correctness. No wokeism. You're listening to Underground USA.
Thanks for downloading, listening, and sharing. My name is Frank Salvato, and you're spending a few moments in Underground USA. I want to address something that I found to be quite interesting in Joe Biden's demeanor, especially after his pathetic debate performance. As woke as it has become, Harvard Medical School still gets it right every now and then. Their deductions on the stages of grief are both cogent and corroborated. We see the first three stages playing out in President Joe Biden as he looks towards November. Yes, Biden is an embellisher and a plagiarist, and most of the time displays a non-existent relationship with the truth. But with his polling numbers in the area of dismal, and his own party's potentates calling into question both his mental acuity and ability to win in November, we're seeing the first three stages of grief appear in his demeanor, the beginning of his acceptance that he is destined to be a one-term and failed president. Citing Dr. Elizabeth Kubler-Ross in her book On Death and Dying, Jennifer Fisher, writing in Harvard Health Publishing, enumerates the stages as denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and finally, acceptance. Of significance at this point in time, where Joe Biden and his presidency are concerned, are denial, anger, and bargaining, all of which he displayed when speaking to Joe Scarborough on MSNBC's jadedly pro-Leftist morning program, Morning Joe. Fisher writes, and please keep in mind that while Fisher is talking about these stages as they relate to the death of a human, I'm applying them to the death of a political career. Quote, denial refers to the period of grieving during which a person refuses to accept the reality of a situation. Denial is different than not understanding. It's a defense mechanism that helps us protect ourselves from the shock of the upsetting hardship. A period of denial can be normal and even helpful during the grieving process as we work to process a difficult situation. Once a person comes to understand the information they received and accepts the reality of death, they often experience anger. Anger can be a natural response directed towards oneself, family members, doctors, God, or even the deceased. Anger is a normal part of the grieving process, though it may seem hurtful or offensive to loved ones. Often, anger is just a manifestation of grief and can present itself in various ways. When we experience grief, we often feel hopeless and overwhelmed. It's common to be overcome by statements of what if and if only as we experience a loss of control over what is happening. During the bargaining stage of grief, a person attempts to negotiate or make compromises. We try to make agreements with ourselves or a deal with a higher power in exchange for feeling less sad or having a different outcome. Bargaining is often irrational." Unquote. In Biden's impromptu segment on Morning Joe, or what the leftist media cabal would have us believe was an organic and spontaneous call-in to the program, Biden, just moments after sending a letter to congressional Democrats that stated emphatically that he was not dropping out of the race, despite all the calls within his party for him to do so, said this.
And here's the deal. It's not going to happen here this time around. The American public is not going to move away from me as the average voter. And again, I'm here for two reasons, pal. One, to rebuild the economy for hardworking middle-class people, give everybody a shot. Just a straight shot. Everybody gets a fair chance. Number one.
Biden's inability to come to terms with the corroborated polling that indicates he is losing both in critical swing states and, in fact, just about every state poll illustrates the denial stage. This denial is compounded and reinforced by the fact his economic, tax, and regulatory policies, he's had 3+ years to implement these policies and to refine them. That these policies have done nothing but damage the middle class further bolsters the notion that his denial of reality is at a severe degree, and one born of frustration, a common malady for those losing political contests. And Biden continued.
Number two, remember all this talk about how I don't have the black support? Come on, give me a break. Come with me. Watch. I'm getting so frustrated by the elites. Now, I'm not talking about you guys, but about the elites in the party who they know so much more. But any of these guys don't think I should run against me. Go ahead, announce the president. Challenge me at the convention.
Biden's trademark anger was on full display as he transitioned from denial to anger. But this time, he wasn't lashing out at an opponent, an auto worker, or a journalist. This time, he was lashing out at the very people he would need going forward if, in fact, he was serious about staying in the race. This anger, directed at those he needs moving forward, satisfies the criteria for the anger stage in the grief pentagon. We also saw vacillation between anger to bargaining in his offer to come with me, watch, and his snide remarks about the Democrat elite who actually do know him well for the 50 years he's been in public office under their banner. And again, Biden continued. When confronted with his obvious cognitive decline, Biden responded with a mixture of denial, anger, and bargaining.
Look, I was feeling so badly before the debate. When I came back, they tested me for, I thought maybe I had COVID, maybe there was something wrong, I had an infection or something. They tested me, they gave me those tests, I was clear. But look, I had a bad night. But the fact of the matter is, look at what I'm doing. I mean, let me put it this way. If there was something that was wrong that night, it's not like it comes and that's one night and it goes away. That's why I've been out. I've been testing myself, been testing everywhere I go, going out and making the case. The night of that debate, I went out. I was out till 2 o'clock in the morning that very night. That very night. It drives me nuts, people talking about this.
Aside from not answering the question asked, instead employing the typical political non-answer answer, Biden launched into a full-blown bargaining session with himself and the interviewers. It's hard to deduce who he was actually trying to convince. Calls for Biden to drop out of the presidential race are accumulating amid rightful concern for his fitness for office. His cognitive decline became abundantly apparent to his allies during the first 2024 presidential debate against Trump, in which he often looked confused, stared slack-jawed, and stumbled through answers, most of the time incoherently. Yet, when Biden's wholly unqualified White House press secretary, Karine Jean-Pierre, was asked about Biden's health, even being asked once point-blank if the president had dementia, Jean-Pierre gave the Biden team's untruthful and, in fact, delusional boilerplate response. Quote, I have an answer. Are you ready for it? It's a no. And I hope you're asking the other guy the same exact question. Unquote. Jean-Pierre's answer held all three stages of grief as we are addressing here: denial, anger, and bargaining. During his primetime ABC News interview with Clintonista George Stephanopoulos, Biden displayed this trifecta again. In the interview, the president continuously denied truths, dismissing polling numbers, his approval rating, and calls for his removal. And when Stephanopoulos told Biden, Mr. President, I've never seen a president of 36% approval get reelected, Biden said,
just when you look at the reality, though, Mr. President, I mean, you won the popular vote. in 2020, but it was still deadly close in the electoral
By
college.
7 million votes.
Yes, but you're behind now in the popular vote.
I don't buy that.
Mr. President, I've never seen a president at 36% approval get reelected.
Well, I don't believe that's my approval rate. That's not what our polls show.
This is classic grief-based denial. Now, from a Republican perspective, it's advantageous for Biden to stay in the 2024 presidential race. The most potent arrow in the campaign quiver centers on keeping the focus on Biden's and the Democrats' failures during Biden's tenure. The border crisis, the economy, their divisive and radical social transformation agenda, his catastrophic failure in the U.S. departure from Afghanistan, etc. If, as Biden alluded to them, the elites in this party succeed in replacing Biden on the ticket, it will allow the leftist narrative machine to saddle Biden with the total of the administration's failures when, in fact, those actually responsible for those failures, Obama 2.0 and the neo-Bolsheviks of the radical left, would remain at the titular head of the Democrat Party, able to continue their Marxist campaign to fundamentally transform our nation into a democratic, socialist, third world nation. Just another cog in the globalist machine. So, we stand at a sad and frustrating crossroads. If Biden is removed from the ticket, or even removed from office through the implementation of the 25th Amendment, then the true puppet-mastering radical Marxists who have greatly damaged our country will be able to select, without voter input, their new puppet. If Biden remains on the ticket, we have no choice but to continue on in the status quo until November, when hopefully the independent and uncommitted voters of the United States wake from the gaslighting of the far left in their demonization of a man who has already proved all of their alarmism wrong by way of his having had held the presidency before. This is the price we pay for both consuming the intellectual waste that is the information offered up by the mainstream media and social media under the guise of news, and for failing to provide proper and necessary vigilance over the government as our forefathers demanded. We get the government we deserve until we don't. If you like the podcast, please rate it and comment if your platform lets you. Go over to undergroundusa.com and subscribe to the Substack, and pick up your copy of Nullification, available on Amazon. But more importantly, talk to your friends, family, colleagues, and acquaintances about politics and religion. Do it calmly and employ facts over emotion. You'll be surprised how much you have in common with a great many of those you talk to. It's something we can all do to preserve the Republic. My name is Frank Salvato, and you're listening to Underground USA.
I'm Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. My main focus was to be the best I could be on the basketball court. The first inkling that something was wrong was I started to notice that I couldn't do things without losing my breath. I still didn't think that it was anything serious until I couldn't make it through the airport. Every 20 or 30 yards, I had to sit down and get my breath. Every physical exertion seemed to exhaust me. I knew something was wrong, and then I went to a baseball game with some friends, and I couldn't deal with any exertion. And finally, I went from the baseball game to the hospital where I was diagnosed with AFib. When I first noticed symptoms, I should have gone to the doctor and told him what was happening. Instead, I tried to let it pass. It took me listening to the cardiologist to help me get it straight as to what I needed to do. AFib increases the risk of stroke about 5 times. So you need to go and find out what's happening. You need to know all of it, and you need to deal with it. It took me a while before I got wise. The No Time to Wait campaign expresses the urgency that people need to find out if they have AFib. I want my experience to help others understand the symptoms of atrial fibrillation. I didn't pay attention to my symptoms, which kept coming and going, or discuss them with my doctor. Experiencing irregular heartbeat, heart racing, chest pain, or any other AFib symptoms, including shortness of breath, fatigue, or lightheadedness, you should talk to your doctor. When it comes to your health, this is no time to wait.